Good morning. My name is Sarah Rugenstone. I'm the site pastor here. If you need a moment during our services at any point to yourself, you can come out here to the side lobby and our service is streamed live out there. We also have a sensory room available for all ages should you need to decompress at any moment. So, a couple of weeks ago, I happened to be in California at the same time as my brothers and my dad. So we all went to SoFi Stadium to watch the Kansas City Chiefs play the Chargers. My dad is a lifelong Chiefs fan, and he made his children be Chiefs fans by association. And here's the evidence as well. I'm the one that's dead asleep in the corner. Now, in rehearsal, our band thought I was the one making a weird face, but that's my brother. That just runs in the family. So, yeah. But me remaining asleep also remained true during football games, like well into my late teens. So, but I was still very excited to go with my dad to a Chiefs game because it means so much to him and he loves that team so much. And while we were there, I saw my sister-in-law taking a picture of my dad with a complete stranger before we left the game. And I was like, that's so embarrassing. What are you doing? Do you know that man? And you're like, no, I do not know this man. And I was like, Dad, why are you doing this? He's like, I try to get a picture with someone on the opposing team each pro game I go to. Okay, there's more evidence that he does this. And I was texting my dad the other day and I asked him what inspired this. And he texted back, to me, it's about sportsmanship. Anything else isn't acceptable and not what God wants. The fun, joy, excitement all comes from playing fair by the rules and shaking hands with your opponent in the end of the game and remembering that they're not your opponent in life. Common love for the game. So, that's our lesson from Tom Stone this morning. And today we are continuing our series, Hold These Truths, centering Jesus in a divisive political season. You're also going to hear me say divisive and divisive to make both parties happy. So, last week, Pastor Matt talked about two myths that we often hear in church when it comes to faith and politics. The first myth is that Jesus is not political. The second myth is that Jesus is partisan or more aligned with one party. Jesus is political, and Jesus is not partisan. I'm sure a lot of us know the danger that politics presents to relationships. When we align Jesus or God's will with a particular singular political party, when you say that you can't be a Christian and not support this candidate or this party, we begin to see those that we disagree with not as opponents to debate, but as enemies to defeat. And this week, we're talking about how politics and division can affect our relationships. In today's political climate, both sides have slipped into a dangerous us versus them and good versus evil mindset. We've demonized each other in the process. We've let hatred and generalizations guide our judgment of people. As soon as we think someone is evil, it makes it easy to justify our own bad behavior, defaming, anger, lying, cheating, stealing, and even violence. It's a classic example of the ends justifying a means. This even trickles down into our everyday relationships. In this political environment, former friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances that we formerly got along with just fine start to become people that we barely want to engage with or even be in relationship with. In some cases, people that you never want to talk to again. So I want to talk about how politics impacts our relationships and how we are called to engage others in a tense political environment. It's not going to be so much about extreme examples, but tools for engagement in everyday life. We're going to actually talk about 3 rules. 3 rules to how to live in a divisive political season. That's right. We narrowed it down for y'all. It's so easy. You're welcome. I should also say that I did not come up with these rules from my own beautiful mind. No, they come from John Wesley, founder of the Methodist movement, who was concerned with people not just believing in Jesus, but actually living the way of Jesus. After all, it was Jesus who said, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. You must love your neighbor as yourself." So, these 3 rules are Wesley's way of saying how we actually love others, and they're so simple that they've actually become called 3 simple rules. Pretty creative, if you ask me. And when you hear them, you're going to understand why they're simple. But if you're one of my friends who is like, nothing is simple, and you're constantly in an existential crisis, I want you to remember that simple doesn't mean easy. So here are rules that we're going to kind of go through today. Do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. Pretty simple, we think. Okay, so the first is do no harm. And this might sound like an interesting place to start. Shouldn't we start with love, doing good, serving, or something positive? But instead, the first rule is all about what we're not supposed to do. Feels restrictive. Why? Have you guys ever seen The Princess Bride? Okay. Do you know the terrible, terrible scene where the person is using that machine to suck the life out of our sweet, sweet Wesley? Okay. And what is the first thing that we have to do to save Wesley and restore him to his former glory? Stop the life sucker machine, okay? And then we can go to Miracle Max. Now, that was a very obscure reference. I hope that you all enjoy 80s movies as much as I do. Now, the point, though, of this connection is to stop the life-sucking machine of hatred. Stop doing harm. Before we can get to anything else, first we have to stop the hate. Stop the hate-inspired, harmful, vindictive, mean-spirited actions in our own lives. When we baptize somebody here at the gathering, the first question we actually ask is, do you renounce the spiritual forces of wickedness, reject the evil powers of this world, and repent of your sin? And usually people say, I do. We have to start by stopping. Do no harm. Spread no hate. Stop the spread of the disease of hate. So I would like for us to define some terms before we move on. Let's chat a little bit about hate and what exactly it is and why it's so readily accessible to our brains. Aristotle, that's right, believed that hate rises without previous offense, is remorseless for the person experiencing it, incurable by time, and strives for the alienation of its target. And then an article from Psychology Today said typically hate is viewed as an extreme form of dislike, amplified version of anger, disgust, and contempt, and a readiness to do harm. Psychologists believe that hate is most likely to emerge in the presence of moral violations, particularly when the targets of hatred are perceived as bad, immoral, and dangerous. And when we do this, we begin to dehumanize people, and that is a slippery, dangerous slope, my friends. When we begin to overgeneralize, we leave no room for curiosity, no room for wonder or questions. Hate takes up too much space. So speaking of the life-sucking machine from Princess Bride, did you all know that hatred actually has physical and mental effects on your body? Friends, hate will literally suck the life out of you. One psychologist writes that research shows that hatred changes the chemistry in the brain as it stimulates the premotor cortex, which is responsible for planning the execution of motion. This prepares us to act aggressively when feeling hateful, either to defend or as an attack. This activation also triggers autonomic nervous system. I'm not a scientist. Creating fight or flight responses, increasing cortisol and adrenaline. And these hormones deplete us, and they contribute to insomnia, anxiety, depression, and chronic illness. Hate is literally preparing you for a fight, prepping you to go, amping your mind and your spirit up. And if you let that go unchecked, it will eat away at you, much like we see in Princess Bride. So, when faced with people that frustrate us, opinions we find problematic, positions we hate, friends that we deeply disagree with, the first rule we're looking at helps remind us that we start by stopping. Do no harm and spread no hate. By saying that whatever I do, however I respond, whatever I say, I am not going to add to the division, to the hate, to the anger, and to the extremist language. What does this look like? Let's take a look at online rhetoric and shares. Oh. Does this do harm? Does this distance me from somebody else? Does it only serve to draw close to those who agree and push away those who don't? Does it add to cynicism, anger? Does it promote something that's not true or seek only to frighten? Is it mean? And when it comes to one-on-one conversations, we can think about the ways that we regularly engage in harm, particularly online. So back in 2020, I began to become easily fiery around a whole lot of political topics. And I don't know if you guys remember 2020, but we couldn't do anything but look at the world around us crumble. So in my COVID bubble, I resorted to spicy social media posts that often reflected my political views, but in a snarky, not exactly opening us up to conversation kind of way. And I actually ended up deleting one of my social medias in 2020 because I couldn't even stand to see some of the political standpoints of my own family. It made me enraged, angry, dare I say hateful. And around that time, I was talking with my brother, and he pointed out to me that he didn't think my posts had changed anyone's mind. If anything, it would make people who disagreed with me more angry and unable to find common ground with me. And this challenged me to begin asking myself about the purpose behind my posts. Now, I try my best for my posts to be helpful to inform, to provide information, and to educate. Sometimes I'm still a little spicy online, okay? But let's have grace. We're all works in progress. Yes, even me. So, now I will say that while my posts didn't end any of my family relationships per se, the truth is they also didn't help build anything up. If we're not careful, our harmful actions, words, posts can chip away at relationships. Small behaviors and statements can erode relationship. And the hardest part is that harm is often defined by other people. If folks regularly tell you that your posts and language behavior is doing harm, then it is our responsibility to pay attention to that. We have to listen to what others tell us, do no harm. So consider, what if in every social media post you put up, your first principle is that you'll try not to diminish others? Or what if when you're driving and somebody cuts you off, instead of the finger, you say, may God bless you and keep you? This is a personal one I'm working on. Now, what if when we're engaging kids, we were mindful about whether our words were building them up or tearing them down? What if during a heated conversation with a friend or a partner, you decided, I will do no harm? What if in the face of even the most frustrating and seemingly nonsensical rhetoric, we started with do no harm? The first way we love others is do no harm, by doing no harm. The second way is by doing good. We're obligated to do more than simply refraining from harm. We're called by Jesus to love, to build up, to positively contribute, to do good when we engage. John writes, dear friend, don't imitate what is bad, but what is good. Whoever practices what is good belongs to God. Whoever practices what is bad has not seen God. And there's something important there. The command is not to be good, but to do good. Not to be nice, but to practice what is good. Wesley's second rule for loving others is to do good. What does that mean? Well, I often look to Matthew chapter 5, verses 7 through 11 as one guide or example for how Jesus wants us to be doing good here on earth. Happy are those people who show mercy because they will receive mercy. Happy are people who have pure hearts because they will see God. Happy are people who make peace because they will be called God's children. Happy are those whose lives are harassed because they are righteous, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Happy are you when people insult and harass you and speak all kinds of bad and false things about you, all because of me. Be full of joy and be glad, because you have a great reward in heaven. In the same way, people harass the prophets who came before you. So Jesus is saying, listen, I know it's going to be rough out there, but through it all, you are called to do good, to show mercy, to be humble, and to make peace. Be full of joy and be glad. So in our everyday engagement, we ask ourselves, is this doing good? What good is this behavior, language, or action making? In our everyday encounter with others, is it worth asking, what does it look like to do good? Before speaking, engaging, and acting, ask yourself, does this behavior heal? Do my words open up understanding? Do I draw people in? Does it encourage? Does it result in justice, reconciliation, or peace? Am I doing good? You don't have to reinvent the wheel either, because there are a lot of people doing good right here in our community that could use your help. You don't have to be the one to solve the world's problems, but you can be a part of the solution right here in your own community with organizations that are doing reputable, good work that benefits the whole community. And I know it's easy to bemoan the current state of our country, city, communities, and online spaces, even our friendships. But it's worth asking, what can you do? Is there an opportunity to do good? Sometimes that can look like having a conversation. Sometimes that can look like refraining from conversation. Sometimes it looks like support and encouragement. Sometimes advocacy and working for justice. Sometimes it's being present and listening. Sometimes it's showing curiosity instead of judgment. Sometimes it's best serving others. And sometimes it's taking care of yourself. You don't have to do everything, but you should do something. In our current environment, what good can you offer? Our third rule, stay in love with God. Okay. Paul writes this, I ask that Christ will live in your hearts through faith. As a result of having strong roots in love, I ask that you'll have the power to grasp love's width and length, height and depth together with all believers. For Wesley, the key to show love was to be love. And what came from staying connected, that came from staying connected to God. We can't show up in healthy ways for others when we're not healthy ourselves. It's hard to avoid harm and to do good if we're not staying connected to and loving God and caring for ourselves and others. And I know that this is going to feel trite, maybe, but I'm very serious when I say that the opposite of doing harm is spreading love. And I mean, we're literally commanded by Jesus to love our neighbor. And we just read that Paul said he hopes we manifest the power of love, that he believes it can connect all believers. Sharing and receiving love actually has very positive effects on our body and brain when it's a healthy love. And I don't just mean romantic either, but love in all of its relational forms. Love for a friend, love for a team, love for a place, love for a neighbor. I've been thinking a lot about how my dad does this picture thing with opposing teams, how that small act of friendship, love, and crossing boundaries reminds us that we're all connected in this together and that we're not actually opponents in life. Now, I know there's a difference between befriending a fan of an opposing team and political divisions. Because sometimes political divisions mean that somebody fundamentally disagrees with your very existence. And I'm not asking you to be friends. I'm not asking you to put yourself in harm's way. Because do no harm goes for ourselves too. I do not ask you to harm or to make yourself less than in the name of love. Instead, I simply urge you not to return the hate. Like the Reverend Dr. King said, hate does not cancel out hate. I think that you can love from a healthy distance for your own peace of mind and safety. But I do invite you to love as an act of resistance. Resist hatred that is intended for you. Resist narrow-mindedness. Resist the urge to let someone else's own hate manifest in you, because we are people of love. We are called to something more beautiful, complex, and vast than how simple hate can be, how overgeneralized hate gets. Love leaves room for curiosity, understanding, conversation, connection. Love is a glimpse of the divine. Love is an act of resistance in a world so primed to hate. I have more quotes for you, and these are from a neuroscientist. That's right. So, please note that he's also talking about multiple forms of love. Love can have a profound effect on mental health. Appropriate, healthy love promotes belonging and purpose, and in turn can boost mood and decrease anxiety, stress, and depression. Over time, the hormones released in the brain from experiencing love can lead to positive behavioral and emotional changes. These changes include increased empathy, generosity, and resilience. The lasting impact of love on the brain can also promote happiness and a desire to spend time with others. I think we were made to love. Also, appropriate, healthy love can have physical benefits as well, including lowering your blood pressure, boosting the immune system. Studies have shown that a loving relationships can reduce stress levels because you're feeling cared for, comforted, and safe. Further, the hormones that love triggers the brain help with modulating your stress response. I think we were made for love. I'm asking you to love as resistance, not only for others, but for your own self and personhood too. Love can literally heal you. There is a reason God called us to be people of love. This is who we were created to be. See, when we get tired, scared, insecure, stressed, it's hard for us to love others. Divisive political seasons can do things like induce fear, get us panicked, push us to extremes, and make us distrustful. It stokes our suspicion and anger towards others. And I think that in Rule 3, in staying in love with God, this is so important in this time. Because it's even more important that we remember who God is, who God created us to be, and who is really in control during this chaotic time. For Wesley, this meant very practical things of staying connected, like worship, prayer, investing in communal life, and searching the scriptures. And when we drift from God, we drift from our ability to be centered, to feel rooted, and reflect love. Part of staying connected to God is caring for our own soul. I know this about myself, that when I'm not taking care of myself, when I'm not attending to my sleep, to my rest, my own relationship with God, then I don't show up as my best self. Alternatively, when I am taking care of myself, it's easier to deal with difficult people, have hard conversations, keep my emotions from overwhelming me, and respond in ways that are not harmful. And practically speaking, I also want to let you know that it's okay to not engage with difficult people as an act of caring for yourself and staying connected with God. That's the thing you can do. The third rule tells us that to love others and to avoid our own worst instincts, we have to stay connected to God, remember who God is and who God created us to be. So this week, I challenge you to either write down or snap a picture of these 3 simple rules. And every day, I want you to try one of these rules. All 3 of these rules would be great. But we got do no harm. Refrain from adding to the chaos and spreading hate. Do good. Find ways of showing up that build up instead of tearing down. Stay in love with God, for we can only reflect and practice what we ourselves are rooted in. Love heals. So I did worry that this message would be oversimplified because there are very real, harmful things that cause division and fractured feelings. And I don't want to negate those complexities. And I think that sometimes simplifying, going back to the basics, is just what we need. Because again, simple doesn't always mean easy. After all, it was Jesus who hit us with this very complex and very simple commandment. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your being and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. You must love your neighbor as you love yourself. Everything starts here. Politics so often aim to divide us, to make us scared, to disorient us, and to induce panic, fear, and hatred. The antidote is to remember who we are, whose we are, and who we are called to be, people who sow love wherever they go. Will you pray with me? God of everyone, these political seasons are scary, fracturing, and isolating. We ask for your presence in our lives and conversations this week and always. We come here each week and make peace with one another by way of your grace. May we be able to bring that peace to every table we go to this week. Remind us that you are our true hope, guide, and future. Remind us to do no harm, to do good, and to stay in love with you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.